Daniel Carter had been a prisoner for 17 days. He counted each one by the dim cycle of lights in his cell. Before his capture, he had been a simple salvage engineer on the mining vessel Horizon's Edge. His job was to fix broken machines and pull valuable metals from dead asteroids. It was quiet work, safe work, the kind of work where nothing exciting ever happened. Then the Velkai came. They descended upon his ship like locusts, their cruisers blocking out the stars. Daniel remembered the screaming. He remembered the smoke. He remembered being dragged from his hiding spot in the engine room by creatures that looked like giant insects standing on two legs. Their bodies were covered in hard shells of different colors. Their faces had large compound eyes and clicking mandibles instead of mouths. Now he stood in chains in a place he did not understand. The arena was massive. Its walls were made of black stone that seemed to swallow light. Thousands of Velkai filled the seats around him, their chittering voices creating a sound like static from a broken radio. Daniel stood behind a shimmering energy barrier that separated prisoners from the main floor. He was not alone. A dozen other captured beings stood with him. Some were species he recognized. Most were not. A guard had told him, in broken common tongue, that he was here to witness something. A trial of some kind. Daniel did not understand why prisoners needed to watch trials, but he had learned quickly that asking questions only earned him pain. So he watched. In the center of the arena stood a female Velkai warrior. Her shell was a deep blue color, like sapphires in starlight. But her beauty was marked by damage. Cracks ran across her carapace. Old scars crossed her arms and legs. She stood with her back straight and her head high, but Daniel could see the exhaustion in the way she held herself. This was someone who had been fighting for a very long time. Her name, he would later learn, was Kiravine. Across from her sat a massive Velkai on a throne carved from the same black stone as the arena walls. His shell was blood red, and golden ornaments hung from his body. When he spoke, his voice boomed across the arena like thunder. "Kiravine of the Blue Shell clan," he announced. "You stand accused of treason against your sovereign. You refused a direct order. You shamed your warriors. You spat upon the honor of your bloodline." The crowd hissed and clicked in response. "How do you answer these charges?" Kiravine's voice was steady. "I answer that I am not guilty. I refuse to lead my warriors against a convoy of refugees. Women, children, the old and the sick. They carried no weapons. They posed no threat. Attacking them would have been murder, not war." The red Velkai leaned forward on his throne. "I am Sovereign Nexral. My word is law. When I give an order, it is followed. There is no room for personal judgment in matters of war. Then your law is wrong." The crowd erupted in outrage. Daniel watched as guards moved closer to Kiravine, but she did not flinch. She simply stood there, waiting. Nexral raised one massive claw, and silence fell instantly. "By the ancient customs of our people," he said, "you have the right to trial by combat. Do you invoke this right?" "I do." "Then name your champion." Kiravine turned to look at the stands around her. Daniel saw her eyes move from face to face, searching for someone, anyone. But everywhere she looked, people turned away. Old friends refused to meet her gaze. Former allies suddenly found the floor very interesting. No one would stand for her. "I see," she said quietly. "Then I will stand for myself." Nexral laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Very well. Vorduk, come forward." From the shadows emerged the largest Velkai Daniel had ever seen. His shell was jet black and his claws were as long as swords. He moved with the easy confidence of a predator who had never known fear. In his hands, he carried a spear that crackled with blue plasma energy. "Vortak has killed 17 champions in this arena," Nexral announced with obvious pleasure. He has never lost. He has never shown mercy. Kiravine said nothing. She simply walked to a weapon rack at the edge of the arena. But when she reached for a spear, a guard stopped her. Traitors do not deserve proper weapons, Dexrol said. You may use what remains. The guard handed her a broken training spear. Its blade was shattered. Its power cell was dead. It was barely more than a stick. Daniel felt something twist in his stomach. This was not a trial. This was an execution dressed up in ritual. Kiravine took the broken spear without complaint. She tested its weight, adjusted her grip, and turned to face Vordok. The crowd began to chant. It was a rhythmic sound, almost musical, building in intensity as the two warriors faced each other. Daniel could not look away. Vortek did not wait. He charged forward with his plasma spear blazing, moving faster than anything that large should be able to move. Kiravine tried to block, but the impact was too strong. The broken spear shattered completely in her hands, and the force of the blow sent her flying backward. She hit the ground hard. Her body rolled across the stone floor, leaving a trail of blue blood behind her. The crowd roared in approval. Vordik walked toward her slowly now, savoring the moment. His plasma spear hummed with deadly energy. Kiravine tried to rise but fell back down. Her legs would not support her. She looked up at her executioner with defiance still burning in her eyes, but her body had nothing left to give. The broken handle of her spear had rolled away from her. It slid across the arena floor, passed under the energy barrier, and came to rest directly at Daniel's feet. He looked down at it. He looked up at the fallen warrior. He looked at the monster, about to kill her. Something inside Daniel Carter broke. Or maybe something finally came together. He could not explain it then, and he would never be able to explain it later. All he knew was that he could not stand there and watch this happen. He could not do nothing. Daniel reached down and picked up the broken spear. Before anyone could stop him, before he could stop himself, he threw his body through the energy barrier. Pain exploded across his skin as the field burned him, but he pushed through. He stumbled into the arena, smoke rising from his clothes, and placed himself between Vortak and Kiravine. He raised the broken spear in a defensive stance. The entire arena went silent. Every single Valkai stopped moving, stopped breathing. They stared at the small, soft, fragile human standing in the middle of their sacred arena, holding a broken stick, facing down their greatest warrior. Daniel's hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. But he did not move. He did not run. He simply stood there, ready to die for someone he had never met. The silence in the arena was so complete that Daniel could hear his own breathing. It sounded too loud, too fast, like a scared animal, which, he supposed, was exactly what he was. Vordik stood frozen in mid-stride, his plasma spear still raised for the killing blow that would now never come. His compound eyes stared at Daniel with an expression the human could not read. Confusion, perhaps, or disbelief. Maybe both. Behind Daniel, Kiravine made a sound. It might have been his name. It might have been a curse. He did not turn to look. Sovereign Dexrol rose slowly from his throne. His massive body blocked out the lights behind him, casting a long shadow across the arena floor. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. What is this? No one answered. I asked a question. His voice rose to a roar. What is this creature doing in my arena? Daniel wanted to speak. He wanted to say something brave or clever, or at least meaningful. But his throat was dry, and his mind was blank, and all he could do was stand there, holding his broken stick, waiting to die. A door opened somewhere in the stands. An old Valkai descended the stairs slowly, carefully, as though each step required great effort. He wore robes covered in strange symbols that seemed to shimmer and move in the light. His shell was gray with age, cracked in places, but his eyes were sharp and bright. The crowd parted for him with obvious respect. "Sovereign Dexral," the old one said. "I am Priest Kethmorn, keeper of the ancient laws. I must speak." Dexral's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Speak then, priest. Explain why I should not have this human killed where he stands." Kethmorn walked into the arena. He moved past Vornik without a glance and stopped in front of Daniel. For a long moment, he simply studied the human. His ancient eyes moved from Daniel's face to his hands to the broken spear he held. "Tell me, human," the priest said. "Did anyone ask you to do this?" Daniel shook his head. "No. Did anyone promise you reward? Freedom? Your life? No. Then why? Why did you cross the barrier? Why did you pick up this broken weapon? Why did you place yourself between this warrior and her death?" Daniel thought about the question. He thought about his life back on the mining ship. He thought about his mother, who had died when he was young, and his father, who had raised him alone. He thought about all the small choices that had led him to this moment. "Because it was wrong," he finally said. "What was happening here? It was wrong, and I could not just watch." The priest nodded slowly. Then he turned to face the crowd, raising his voice so that all could hear. "The ancient law is clear. It was written in the time of our first ancestors, before we reached for the stars, before we built our great cities. The law states that any being who raises the fallen spear of the accused, who stands in defense of her honor without being asked, without promise of reward, binds himself as her champion by the covenant of the first warriors." A murmur ran through the crowd. "This human has invoked the right of Kethvora," the priest continued. "Whether he knew it or not, whether he meant to or not. The law does not care about intention. It cares only about action." And his action was clear. Dexral stepped forward. "You cannot be serious. He is a human, a prisoner, a nothing. He cannot participate in our sacred rituals." "The law makes no distinction of species," Kethmorn replied calmly. "It says any being, not any Velkai. The first warriors were wise. They knew that honor knows no boundary of blood. This is absurd. I will not allow it." The priest turned to face the sovereign directly. His old body seemed to grow taller, stronger, as though drawing power from something beyond physical form. "You do not have the authority to allow or deny it, sovereign. The ancient law is older than your bloodline. It is older than your throne. It binds all Velkai, from the lowest worker to the highest ruler. Will you stand before your people and declare that you are above the law?" The arena went very quiet again. Dexral's claws clenched at his sides. Daniel could see the rage building in the sovereign's body, the desire to simply order everyone killed and be done with it. But something held him back. Perhaps the weight of tradition. Perhaps the thousands of eyes watching him. Perhaps simply the knowledge that even his power had limits. "Fine," he finally said. "Let the human play at being a champion. It will make the entertainment more interesting. Vornik will simply kill two instead of one." The crowd seemed unsure how to react. Some clicked their approval. Others remained silent. Kethmoran turned back to Daniel. "You have 3 cycles to prepare for combat. The law grants this time to any champion who invokes the right. Use it well, human. You will need every moment." 3 cycles, Daniel repeated. "How long is that?" "Approximately 72 of your hours. 3 days." Daniel had 3 days to learn how to fight an alien monster twice his size in an arena built for warriors. 3 days to somehow not die. He should have felt terrified. He should have felt regret. Instead, he felt something strange. Something almost like calm. The priest gestured to Kiravine, who had managed to rise to her feet. "Take your champion to your quarters. Teach him what you can." The law binds you together now, for better or worse. Kiravine limped forward and placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder. Her touch was surprisingly gentle for being covered in hard shell. "Come," she said quietly. "We have much to discuss." As they walked toward the arena exit, Daniel could feel the eyes of thousands following them. He could hear whispers in a language he did not understand. He could sense the shift in something larger than himself, as though by picking up that broken spear, he had moved a piece on a board. He could not see dark behind them. Vortic had not moved. The black warrior simply stood there, watching, his plasma spear still humming with deadly energy. 3 days, Vortic finally said. His voice was deep and cold. "Enjoy them, little human. They will be your last." Daniel did not turn around. He did not respond. He simply kept walking, one foot in front of the other, into an uncertain future. But something had changed in him. Something fundamental. He had spent his whole life avoiding trouble, staying small, staying safe. He had watched injustice happen and told himself it was not his problem. He had turned away from the hard things because the hard things were scary. Not anymore. Whatever happened in 3 days, whatever pain awaited him in that arena, Daniel Carter had made his choice. He had drawn a line in the sand. He had said, with his actions, if not his words, that some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth dying for. He did not know if he could win. He did not know if he could survive. But he knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that he would not run, that he would face whatever came next, and he would face it standing. The quarters they gave Daniel and Kiravine were small but clean. 2 sleeping platforms sat against opposite walls. A single window looked out over the alien city, where towers of black stone reached toward a purple sky. Strange lights moved between the buildings like fireflies. Daniel sat on the edge of his platform and looked at his hands. They were still red from the energy barrier. Small blisters had formed on his palms. He had been burned before, working with hot metal and broken machinery, but this pain felt different. It reminded him of what he had done, what he had committed to. Kiravine stood by the window with her back to him. She had not spoken since they left the arena. Her blue shell caught the light from outside, making her look almost like a statue carved from precious stone. An hour passed in silence, then another. Finally, as the purple sky began to darken toward black, Kiravine turned around. "Why did you do it?" Daniel looked up at her. Her compound eyes reflected the city lights like 1,000 tiny stars. "I already answered that question," he said. "In the arena. It was wrong. I could not just watch." "That is not an answer. That is an excuse." She moved closer, her steps quiet despite her size. "Do you understand what you have done? You have bound yourself to me. By our law, we are now linked until this matter is resolved. If you die in that arena, my honor is lost forever. My name will be erased from history. My bloodline will be cursed for 10 generations. Daniel blinked. "I did not know that." "Of course you did not know. You are human. You know nothing of our ways. You stumbled into our most sacred ritual like a child wandering into a war." She sat down across from him, her body heavy with exhaustion and frustration. "So I ask again, why?" Daniel thought carefully before answering. He thought about his father, a quiet man who worked long hours and never complained. He thought about the stories his father used to tell him at night. Stories about heroes who stood up for what was right, even when it cost them everything. "When I was young," Daniel began slowly, "my father told me something I never forgot. He said that the world is full of people who see bad things happen and do nothing. They tell themselves it is not their problem. They tell themselves someone else will fix it. They tell themselves that one person cannot make a difference." He looked down at his burned hands again. My father said that this way of thinking is a disease. It spreads from person to person, generation to generation, until everyone believes it. Until no one stands up for anything. Until evil wins simply because good people are too afraid or too tired or too comfortable to fight. Your father sounds like a wise man. He was. He died when I was 16. Mining accident. Something broke in the equipment, and he went in to fix it when everyone else ran away. He saved 7 people that day. Daniel's voice caught slightly. He did not make it out. Kiravine was silent for a long moment. I understand now, she finally said. You are not a fool. You are something more dangerous. You are an idealist. Daniel laughed despite himself. Is that bad? It is complicated. Among my people, idealism is considered a weakness. We are taught to be practical, to calculate odds, to fight only battles we can win. Your way of thinking would be seen as foolish. And what do you think? Kiravine tilted her head, considering the question. I think that I once believed as you do. I think that is why I refused to attack that refugee convoy. I thought that some things were more important than orders. More important than survival. She clicked her mandibles softly. I thought that honor meant something. Does it not? I do not know anymore. Look where my honor has brought me. Accused of treason. Abandoned by my clan. Defended by a stranger who will almost certainly die for me. She shook her head. Perhaps the practical ones are right. Perhaps idealism is just a slow form of suicide. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. The alien city stretched out below him, vast and strange and beautiful in its own way. Somewhere out there, Vordak was preparing to kill him. Somewhere out there, Sovereign Vexrol was probably celebrating his coming victory. Let me tell you something about my people, Daniel said. We are not very strong. We are not very fast. We have no claws, no shells, no natural weapons of any kind. By all logic, we should have been eaten by predators millions of years ago. Yet you survived. More than survived. We spread across our entire planet. We built cities and ships and reached for the stars. And do you know how we did it? Kiravine moved to stand beside him at the window. Tell me. We did it together. When one of us faced something too big to fight alone, others would stand with them. When one of us fell, others would pick them up. We learned that the pack is stronger than the individual. That many small hands can move mountains. He turned to look at her directly. But more than that, we learned something else. We learned that some fights are worth fighting even if you lose. Some causes are worth dying for. Because if everyone always runs from the hard things, then the hard things always win. Someone has to be the first to stand. Someone has to draw the line and say no further. And you think that is you? One small human against the greatest warrior my people have ever produced. Maybe, maybe not. But I know one thing for certain. Daniel smiled, though there was no humor in it. I would rather die standing for something than live kneeling for nothing. Kiravine stared at him for a long time. Her compound eyes searched his face as though looking for something. A lie, perhaps. A weakness. A crack in his conviction, she did not find one. You are insane, she finally said. Completely and utterly insane, probably. You will die in that arena, probably. And yet you are not afraid. Daniel considered this. No, I am afraid. I am terrified. My hands have not stopped shaking since I crossed that barrier. But fear and courage are not opposites, Kiravine. You cannot have courage without fear. Courage is feeling the fear and doing the right thing anyway. Something changed in her expression. The hardness softened slightly. The despair in her eyes flickered with something else. Something that might have been hope. I have one more question, she said. Ask it. If you knew then what you know now, if you knew about the binding, about the consequences, about Vordak, and the near certain death that awaits you. Would you still have picked up that spear? Daniel did not hesitate. Yes. Kiravine nodded slowly. Then, surprising them both, she reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. Then we have 2 days left, she said, and much work to do. You will not defeat Vortek with philosophy and good intentions. If we are going to survive this, we need a plan. Do you have one? She clicked her mandibles in what Daniel was beginning to recognize as a Volkai smile. Not yet, but I am starting to believe that we might find one. She turned away from the window and moved toward the door. Rest now. Tomorrow, we train, and I will tell you everything I know about Vortek and how he fights. She paused at the door and looked back at him. You are still going to die, human. The odds are overwhelming. But perhaps, just perhaps, we can make your death mean something. I appreciate the encouragement, Daniel said dryly. I am not trying to encourage you. I am trying to be honest. You deserve that much. She opened the door. Sleep well, champion. Tomorrow will be difficult. Then she was gone. Daniel stood alone in the small room, looking out at the alien stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was everything he had ever known. He would probably never see it again, but he found that he did not regret his choice. Whatever happened next, he had done the right thing. He had stood up when everyone else had looked away. That had to count for something. It had to. The training began at first light. Kiravine had acquired 2 practice spears from somewhere. They were dull and powerless, but they were better than nothing. She showed Daniel how to hold the weapon, how to stand, how to move his feet. It did not go well. Daniel's arms were too short to use the spear effectively. His reactions were too slow. His body did not move the way Volkai bodies moved. After 3 hours of practice, he had managed to hit Kiravine exactly 0 times, while she had knocked him down more times than he could count. This is hopeless, Kiravine said as Daniel picked himself up from the floor for the 20th time. You cannot learn 10 years of training in 2 days. Even the basics would take months. Daniel rubbed his shoulder where she had struck him. There has to be another way. There is not. Volkai combat is based on speed, reach, and power. Vortek has more of all 3 than you could ever dream of having. She tossed her practice spear aside in frustration. I do not know why I thought this would work. Daniel sat down on the floor, breathing hard. His body ached in places he did not know could ache. But his mind was still working, still turning the problem over and over. Tell me about the rules, he said. Tell me exactly what the ancient law says about this fight. Kiravine sat down across from him. The right of Kethvara is one of our oldest traditions. It exists to ensure that trials by combat are fair. Fair how? The law states that both fighters must face each other with equality of arms. Whatever weapon the champion chooses to wield, the opposing fighter must wield the same. Daniel frowned. So if I use a broken spear, Vortek has to use a broken spear? Yes, that is why he was given the plasma spear in the first fight. Because the law did not apply. Kiravine was the accused, not a champion. Champions have different rights. And if I choose to use no weapon at all, Kiravine tilted her head. Then Vortek would be required to face you unarmed as well. But that changes nothing. His claws are weapons. His shell is armor. His strength is 10 times yours. Without a weapon, you would have even less chance than you do now. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He thought about everything his father had taught him. Not just the words, but the practical skills. Growing up on mining stations and cargo ships, Daniel had gotten into his share of fights. There were always bullies, always bigger kids who thought size meant they could do whatever they wanted. His father had taught him how to deal with them. Let me ask you something, Daniel said slowly. How do Volkai fight when they do not have weapons? when it is just body against body. We do not. Or rather, we do not train for it. Why would we? We are born with weapons. She held up her claws. These are enough to tear through metal. Our shells protect us from most attacks. Unarmed combat is something we never needed to develop. Daniel felt something click in his mind. A tiny spark of possibility. So Vortak has never fought someone using only his body? No weapons, no claws, just grappling and holding? I do not understand. What is grappling? Daniel stood up. The pain in his muscles faded as excitement began to build in his chest. Humans developed something over thousands of years. We call it wrestling. Some cultures call it other things. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Sambo. They are all based on the same basic idea. What idea? The idea that you do not have to be stronger than your opponent to beat them. You just have to be smarter about how you use your body. Daniel began to pace, his thoughts coming faster now. See, when two humans fight, size matters. But it does not matter as much as people think. A smaller fighter who knows how to use leverage, who knows where the joints are weak, who knows how to control position and cut off air or blood, can beat a much larger opponent. Kiravine stood up as well, her interest clearly growing. Explain more. Every body has weak points. Places where the bones connect. Places where the muscles are thin. Places where pressure can cause pain or unconsciousness or worse. If you know where these places are, and you know how to reach them, you can defeat enemies you have no business defeating. And you know how to do this? Daniel nodded. My father taught me. He said that in the black of space, you never know what you might face. He said that the most dangerous weapon is not a gun or a knife. It is the mind that controls the body. Kiravine moved closer, studying him with new eyes. Show me. Daniel thought for a moment. Then he reached out and gently took her arm. Do you feel this joint here? Where the upper arm meets the lower. Yes. If I apply pressure in the right direction, I can lock this joint. Your muscles do not matter. Your strength does not matter. The joint can only bend one way. If I push it the other way, it breaks. He released her arm. Every joint in your body is like this. The knee, the ankle, the neck, even your claws have joints. Kiravine flexed her fingers, looking at them as though seeing them for the first time. And there is more, Daniel continued. On my planet, we learned that there are places in the neck where blood flows to the brain. If you squeeze these places hard enough, the brain does not get blood. After a few seconds, the body goes to sleep. After longer, it dies. You would attempt to do this to Vortak? I would attempt to do whatever it takes to survive. Daniel met her eyes. Vortak has never faced a fighter like me. He has trained his whole life to fight other Velkai, other warriors who use the same techniques he does. He has no experience with what I can do. You are assuming his body has the same weaknesses as yours. Every body has weaknesses. Every living thing that moves has joints that can be broken, airways that can be blocked, blood vessels that can be squeezed. These are not human weaknesses. They are the weaknesses of being alive. Kiravine was silent for a long moment. Daniel could see her mind working, processing this new information, trying to find the flaws in his reasoning. It is still almost certainly suicide, she finally said. Even if you surprise him once, he will adapt. He will use his claws. He will tear you apart before you can lock any joint. Then I will have to be fast. And I will have to be lucky. But at least it is a chance. That is more than I had 10 minutes ago. You truly believe you can do this? You believe you can defeat the greatest warrior my people have ever produced using nothing but your hands and some ancient human fighting techniques? Daniel smiled. It was not a confident smile. It was not the smile of a man who knew he would win. It was the smile of a man who had found a single ray of light in complete darkness and was determined to chase it. I believe I have to try. And I believe that sometimes trying is enough. Kiravine studied him for another long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then we have 1 day left. Show me these techniques. Show me everything. I need to understand what you will do so I can help you prepare. It will not be pretty. Human fighting is ugly. It is messy. It is about survival, not honor. Good. Kiravine moved into the center of the room and turned to face him. Vordak took my honor from me long ago. I have no use for pretty. Show me how humans survive. Daniel took a deep breath and began to teach her everything he knew. The night passed quickly. Too quickly. By the time the first light returned, Daniel had shown Kiravine the basic principles of leverage and body control. He had explained chokes and joint locks and the importance of position. He had demonstrated how a smaller body could use a larger body's weight against itself. And somewhere in those long hours, something had changed between them. They were no longer strangers bound by an accident. They were partners, comrades, maybe even friends. As the day of the fight dawned, Kiravine placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder one last time. Whatever happens today, she said quietly, I want you to know that I am grateful. Not just for standing for me, but for reminding me that honor is not dead. It just looks different than I thought. Daniel nodded. Let us go show them what a human can do. Together, they walked toward the arena. The arena was filled beyond capacity. Word had spread across the Velkai territories. A human had invoked the ancient rite. A soft, small, weak creature from a young species had challenged the greatest warrior their civilization had ever produced. Thousands had traveled from distant worlds to witness what everyone assumed would be a brief and bloody execution. Daniel stood at the entrance to the arena floor, looking out at the sea of clicking, chittering spectators. The sound was overwhelming, like standing inside a thunderstorm made of insects. Above it all, Sovereign Dexral sat on his throne of black stone, his red shell gleaming with anticipation. Kiravine stood beside Daniel. The law did not allow her to enter the arena with him, but she had walked him to the gate. Remember what I told you about his left leg, she said quietly. He favors it, an old injury that never healed correctly. It is a small weakness, but it is something. Daniel nodded. I remember. And remember to breathe. You will want to hold your breath when you are afraid. Do not. Your muscles need air. Your brain needs air. Breathe. I will. The horn sounded. The crowd fell silent. It is time, Kiravine said. She reached out and touched his face with surprising gentleness. Fight well, Daniel Carter. Fight well and come back to me. Daniel walked into the arena. The black stone was cold beneath his bare feet. He had removed his shoes, his shirt, everything that might get in his way or give Vortak something to grab. He wore only simple pants, his pale skin exposed to the alien air. The crowd murmured in confusion. They had never seen a fighter enter an arena so exposed, so vulnerable. From the opposite gate, Vortak emerged. The black warrior was even more terrifying in the daylight. His shell absorbed the light around him like a living shadow. His claws were polished to a razor edge. He moved with the easy confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. But he carried no weapon. The equality of arms rule had done its work. Daniel had declared that he would fight with nothing, and so Vortak was forced to do the same. The crowd's confusion grew louder. This was not how combat was supposed to look. This was wrong, strange, unprecedented. Vortak stopped in the center of the arena and looked at Daniel with something like amusement. So this is the great human champion, he said. His voice carried across the silent arena. I have killed warriors twice your size. I have torn ships apart with these claws. And you come before me naked and unarmed, like a fresh-hatched larva waiting to be consumed." Daniel said nothing. He simply walked forward until he stood 10 paces from the massive Velkai. "Tell me, little creature, do you have any last words? Any final wisdom from your primitive species?" Daniel looked up at the monster before him. He thought about his father. He thought about Kiravine. He thought about all the people watching, all the species across the galaxy who would hear about what happened here today. "Just one thing," he said quietly. "My people have a saying. It is not the size of the dog in the fight. It is the size of the fight in the dog." Vortic laughed. "What foolishness. Size is everything. Strength is everything. You will learn this in the final seconds of your life." The horns sounded again. The fight began. Vortic charged with terrifying speed. His claws extended, his mandibles spread wide. Daniel had expected this. He had studied the recordings that Kiravine had shown him. Watching how the warrior moved, how he attacked Dot at the last possible moment. Daniel dropped low and rolled to the side. Vortic's claws cut through empty air where Daniel's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. The Velkai stumbled slightly, surprised by the mist. Daniel was already moving. He came up behind Vordak and grabbed hold of the warrior's left leg, the one with the old injury. He wrapped his arms around the joint and twisted. Vordak roared in pain and surprise. He spun, trying to shake Daniel off, but the human held on with desperate strength. They crashed to the ground together, Daniel still clinging to the leg, still applying pressure. The crowd went absolutely silent. Vordak kicked and thrashed. His free leg caught Daniel in the ribs, cracking something with a sound like breaking wood. Daniel gasped but did not let go. He twisted harder, feeling the joint begin to give, with a sound of pure rage. Vordak reached back and grabbed Daniel by the hair, tearing him free and throwing him across the arena like a discarded toy. Daniel hit the ground hard and rolled. Pain exploded through his body. He tasted blood, but he forced himself to his feet, forced himself to face the monster again. Vortic stood slowly. His left leg trembled slightly. Not broken, but damaged. Weakened. The crowd began to murmur again. This was not how the fight was supposed to go. The human should have been dead by now. "Interesting," Vortic said. His voice had lost some of its amusement. "You are tougher than you look, little creature. But you cannot hurt me. You can only delay the inevitable." He charged again. This time Daniel was not fast enough. Vortic caught him with a glancing blow that sent him spinning. Before he could recover, the Velkai was on him, pinning him to the ground with his massive weight. Daniel could not breathe. The pressure was enormous. He felt his ribs grinding together, felt his lungs straining for air that would not come. But he remembered what he had taught Kiravine. He remembered the principles. Position before submission. Never give up the neck. Always keep moving. He worked his arm up, finding the gap between Vortak's shell plates. He pushed his forearm against the soft tissue underneath, against the place where blood flowed to the Velkai's brain. Vortic tried to pull back, but Daniel locked his legs around the warrior's body, holding him in place. They rolled across the arena floor, each fighting for position, each refusing to give ground. The next 3 hours were the longest of Daniel's life. He was thrown. He was cut. He was beaten and crushed and nearly killed a dozen times. But every time Vortak thought the fight was over, Daniel got back up. Every time the warrior relaxed, thinking his opponent was finished, Daniel found a new grip, a new hold, a new way to cause pain. And slowly, impossibly, Vortic began to tire. The Velkai had never faced anything like this. Their combat was based on quick kills, overwhelming force, natural weapons. They did not train for long fights. They did not train for endurance. They did not train for an enemy who refused to die. But humans did. Daniel's ancestors had hunted across the plains of Earth not by being faster or stronger than their prey, but by being more persistent. They would chase their targets for hours, for days, until the animals simply could not run anymore. It was called persistence hunting, and it was built into human DNA. Vortic was stronger. Vortic was faster. But Daniel was relentless. As the third hour ended, Daniel finally found his opening. Vortic stumbled on his injured leg, and Daniel was there. He climbed the massive body like a man scaling a cliff, finding holds in the gaps between shell plates. He wrapped his arms around Vortic's throat from behind and squeezed. Vortic thrashed wildly. He slammed Daniel against the arena floor, against the walls, against anything he could reach. Daniel felt bones break. He felt blood flowing from a dozen wounds. But he did not let go. He squeezed harder. The seconds stretched into eternity. Vortic's movements grew weaker. His breathing became ragged. His claws, which had been tearing at Daniel's arms, fell to his sides. And then, with a sound like a falling mountain, the greatest warrior the Velkai had ever produced collapsed to the arena floor. Daniel released his grip and fell beside him, too exhausted to move. The arena was silent. Priest Kethmorin descended from the stands, his old body moving as quickly as it could. He knelt beside Vortic and checked for signs of life. "He lives," the priest announced, "but he is defeated. The champion has shown mercy where none was required." He stood and raised his voice so all could hear. "The right of Kethvara is complete. The human has proven the innocence of the accused. By the covenant of the first warriors, Kiravine is restored to honor, and her champion has earned the eternal gratitude of her line." Sovereign Dex Rahl rose from his throne, his mandibles trembling with barely contained fury. But the law was the law. Even he could not challenge what had happened before 10,000 witnesses. Kiravine rushed into the arena and knelt beside Daniel. Tears flowed from her compound eyes as she gathered him in her arms. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." Daniel managed a weak smile through broken lips. "Told you. We are good at fighting things bigger than us." The crowd began to chant. At first it was soft, uncertain, but it grew louder, spreading through the arena like wildfire. Daniel did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was respect. It was wonder. It was perhaps even fear. A new legend had been born that day. The story of the small, soft, fragile human who had raised a broken spear for a stranger and defeated a monster with nothing but his hands and his stubborn, unbreakable will. In the years that followed, that legend would spread across the galaxy. Species who had never heard of humanity would learn the name Daniel Carter. They would learn that humans were not to be underestimated. They would learn that this strange, young species had something inside them that defied logic, that laughed at odds, that simply refused to quit. As Daniel was carried from the arena, barely conscious but alive, he heard Kiravine whispering in his ear. He wanted to ask what she meant. He wanted to understand. But the darkness was taking him, pulling him down into unconscious recovery. The last